the information on what are the automation things that we followed in the Scrum Races team and the benefits realized by that. So we had two kind of automation that we had. So one is using the test automation tool or test automation with the Visual Studio unit test project, and we made some customization on top of it, and we made it to act like a functional automation. And the second thing, so that was done basically by a dev team member where you don't have a QA. So we use the dev team's effort and we made sure we are also able to validate the functional flow. So that was implemented in Dividend project earlier, and there is another kind of functional automation where we had a QA involved and a proper UFT was prepared, and we also validated the UI or the console app with the UFT. So that was implemented in live pricing, and we have also started using that in re-rate automation as well. And at a high level, the benefits that we realized on Dividend is like in Dividend tool, we need to update, say, 21 different tables with almost 110 columns involved in it. And for that, whenever there is an update, we use this automation tool or this functional flow to validate almost 4,000 cases for each and every update, so that we can ensure the old values are not impacted when there is a new change. So that one would have taken days earlier, but right now after having this, it takes few minutes to do the comparison. And on top of that, there are, say, 25 different steps involved, and earlier for updating and validating, and if there is an issue identified, it will be hard for us to validate. So this also helped us in nailing down the issue and identifying the intermediate values and doing a compare at that level helped us in identifying where exactly the issue has occurred. So the root cause analysis have also become easier with this automation approach that we have followed. And with respect to re-rate and live pricing automation, that is where QA worked on UFT. So in live pricing, if you see, there were almost 6 to 8 months of development, and we also had 1 or 2 months of enhancement period, where during the enhancement, even though we haven't touched the old code, somehow because of inclusion of new flow, it was introducing issues. So that was really hard for dev to do a testing of the current stories, as well as on top of that they have to validate the previous regression. So this two UFT automation scripts really helped us a lot, because for each week of development, where 4 to 5 people were working parallelly, there were some 5 to 6 regression defects identified on each stage. So this also reduced the time of QA to do a validation. So this will basically do the smoke test and validate the regression, and only then the QA takes to their region and do the validation. So by that way, we were able to reduce the overhead time where QA need to first validate and say a developer. So developer was getting prior information. Okay, so they know that their new check-in has broken something. So they make sure that the regression issues are also addressed as part of the development process. And it also helped us in making the release faster, and with a high level of confidence we were able to do releases. And on top of that, in re-rate, for example, there were millions of records getting pulled for processing from CARE and LTC BI. So for that, we have implemented a real-time validation with the UFT scripts, which will ensure all the records which were pulled, the numeric columns are validated by doing a row or column sum, and we ensure that the row count matches for all the 20 to 40 tables that we import, and it helps us in reducing the effort involved in later identifying that the source import was wrong, and that has caused confusion. So there are a lot of issues which were captured upfront because of this regression suits that we had, and these are few that we would like to highlight. So just going over a few things. So how the architecture is for the Dividend, where we had the unit test automation script. So once after the dev team checks in the code, the Team City build gets triggered, and it also invokes the Visual Studio test project parallelly. And only on successful completion of the unit test checking, it makes a deployment. So if there is any issue encountered, it immediately notifies the stakeholders on any of the issues. And so this is how the Team City integration looks like. And on top of that, we can also configure based upon the test failures. You can either fail a build, or you can allow the deployment. But right now we are failing the build even if there is one issue identified, so that we don't need to spend time on validating which is a broken build. And on top of that, so the automation, what I was talking about is we were able to make some tweaks to the unit test project. And what we did, we created, instead of having the unit test method with predefined conditions, we started using an Excel to load what are the inputs that it can take, and we also mentioned what is the output it is expected at each level. So I was talking about 25 different columns or 25 different steps involved. So each step I can just mention that, okay, this is the expected value over here, and what this tool does is it will just invoke the unit test method in a flow, so that it takes all these inputs and then performs a calculation and make sure at each stage what is the expected output, and if there is any difference it shows in the UI. So we were able to make some minor tweaks to the unit test methods, and we created a flow so that we can use it for functional validation as well. So that's what this screen was used for, and we usually validate like 4,000 cases whenever there is a change to the master tables. So this is one kind of testing that we implemented, which helped us a lot. And the next one is on the UFT, which is Unified Functional Testing, which was implemented in live pricing, and re-rate we are almost 50% done. So in this architecture, if you see, once after the dev team checks in, the Team City invokes HPALM, and then the HPALM invokes the UFT, which is the Unified Functional Testing Scripts, where the QA or the business user provides what inputs and what are the outputs it has to expect for the provided input, and they also can configure what steps to validate in a driver Excel. That's what they say. For Dividend project, what we for live pricing project, what we did, once after check-in, there is an integrator which was created by a QA team, which bridges between the Team City and the HPALM, and it triggers the suite automation suite, and it ensures that all the functional flow gets validated, and then it sends a response to the HPALM, and then it is passed back to Team City to ensure that the build has succeeded. So if the build succeeds, then it just goes and deploys them to the higher region, that is the integration region, else it fails the build and informs the stakeholders. So this particular config file talks about how it has to make a call. So this gets invoked, and only then it knows, okay, for live pricing or re-rate project, what ALM test case to call, or it knows what project to call, and it also has what user and user credential to use, and basic steps for integration. And this one talks about what input or what are the functional flows to execute. So this is a high level architecture that we have for that. And here, so in Team City, we have some flow where you can mention, like, for smoke test you need to make a call to the UFT, or for regression you need to make a call to certain UFT cases. So those things gets integrated here, and a success message is available once after the UFT execution is successful, and only after success we make a deployment to the higher regions. If not, it doesn't go to the different regions. It just stays there as a broken bill. And in addition to this one, it also loads all the inputs, what was passed, and what was the results generated in the UFT, in HPALM. So you know what test case failed, and what was the result generated, and what was the input which was provided at that time, which will help the developers to do further analysis with the results. So this is the result section, how we would have that in the HPALM test results. And so just to show how the driver Excel is passed with input. So here we can say what.
Hey, Shen. We can cut a little bit into the conclusion time, but we'll have to move on to Ananda this time. Thanks for sharing, and then we'll any questions, please reach out to Shun, and he should be able to answer that. But thank you very much.
Okay. Yep.